Hello students, and welcome to Module 3 of the PAD4704 class. And in this chapter we're going to cover reliability and validity. It's Chapter 3 from the Adams and Lawrence textbook. And this is one of the most important chapters in the semester for learning vocabulary. In this chapter there are just a ton of words which should be used in all of your writing. It should be used in a lot of your descriptions about how you're doing your research, why you're doing your research, and how you're forming the constructs. And you'll soon understand why. I strongly recommend that you spend a couple of times, you go through the quiz and the flashcards that are in the folder for Module 3 and learn these vocabulary words to the point that you can use them with regularity and reliability. And that's an important word, reliability and validity. Reliability is consistency. Validity is accuracy. Very, very important words to understand. And they are assessed at the study level and at the level of measurement. We're going to get into both of those and help you separate them out. A study or measure can be reliable but not valid, but it cannot be valid and not be reliable. So it's a very important distinction to make. Reliability is easier in some ways to demonstrate than validity because you don't have the truth, quote-unquote truth, to worry about. Truth is a construct. And so what you don't have to worry about in reliability is whatever this measure is, whether it's a valid measure or not, is there a reliable way to come up with it and to track it and to make records about it. So that's reliability. One thing that you need to learn, and I try and get involved in politics as much as possible because politics relies on research, but politics is also inherently biased. And so there are a lot of spurious correlations. And so I use politics in a lot of my examples because number one, that's where I live my life. So in Mitt Romney, in the 2012 presidential elections, the big story on election night was that Mitt Romney and his team were very, very surprised that he didn't win. And that had a lot to do with what they were measuring. What they were measuring was being measured reliably, but it was not a valid construct. And that's an important thing to understand. Lying to yourself with reliability while ignoring validity will take you to where they were on election night in Mitt Romney's camp. So the internal polls that made Mitt Romney think he'd win. This was a very interesting story, and it talks about how they were measuring things reliably, but their constructs were not valid constructs. So the reliability of a study is how consistent the results are across similar studies. So there's a lot of ways to do that: test and retest, and replication, a literal replication or a conceptual replication. Those are all ways to do that. You can come up with a measure of internal validity, which is the degree to which we can say that we found an accurate relationship among variables, in that changes in one variable are caused by changes in another variable. So these are a lot of the models that I wanted to do in assignment number 1, are these models were intended to look toward internal validity. External validity talks about the degree to which we can say that the results of a study are accurate for different types of people in different settings assessed with different procedures. Or in other words, generalizability. How generalizable is your research? How generalizable your research is determined by your external validity. So they are always a conflict. Internal validity and external validity are, because if you go for external validity, you lose some of your internal validity. But if you go for internal validity, your study is far less generalizable, if you understand that. Measurement reliability, is the consistency of a measure. Measurement validity is measurement is accurate in that it measures what it purports to measure. Okay, so that all determines how you build your construct. And so now we're going to talk a little bit about constructs. A construct is a concept that cannot be directly measured, i.e. love. How do you measure love? So you have to construct a measure for love. And that's a very important distinction to make. You can't measure love directly, so then you find things that may serve as proxies, and these are known as your constructs. So operationalizing your research involves building constructs for these things that cannot be directly measured. So operational definitions, the explicit explanation of a variable in terms of how it is measured or manipulated. For example, a 10-point self-report scale assessing how much you love your partner. Okay, so these are the constructs. This is how you construct this is how you build your measures. Qualitative measures are non-numerical. Quantitative measures are typically numerical. And the characteristics of the measures in this textbook, the Adams and Lawrence textbook, that talks about identity and the order, whether it's in equal intervals or whether there's a true zero or an absolute zero. So these are all, whether you're measuring your data with nominal data, ordinal data, interval data, or ratio data, which ratio data is interval data that has a true zero. So this is important to know, and this table here is probably something you should take and tape up onto your wall so that you can tell this stuff apart. And ordinal and interval data will get you confused here in a little bit, and so I'm going to tell you how loosely I grade the distinction between ordinal and interval data here in a bit. Nominal data, you can think of a rainbow. Measures are variables in which the numbers refer to categories that have no inherent order to them, and so the categories can be arranged in any order. What shape is it? Well, this is a cone, this is a pyramid, this is a square, this is a ball, this is a sphere, this is an ellipse. So those are all shapes. There's no order. A square is not any different in order than a square does not have to be placed next to a triangle in any ordering system. So that's nominal data. Ordinal data are measures or variables in which the numbers refer to categories that do have an inherent order in them, and thus the numbers convey that order. But each one of the categories in true ordinal data is not a step or a scale or an interval, because that would take it up to the next level and become an interval data. So ordinal data is just small, bigger, biggest. Okay, so we don't know how small is, but we know that bigger is bigger than small, and we know the biggest is the largest size. So there's an order in small, bigger, and biggest. And so that's ordinal data when it goes into that type of an order. Interval or ratio data, also known as scale data, is data based on constant increments. This is $1,000. Okay, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, and it goes on to infinity. Now, if you break here and say, you know what, I don't want this to have this huge skew out here creating this tail, and then you can take all of the data from here over and just say, you know what, we're just going to lump that into one last category. All of a sudden you have converted your interval data into ordinal data because you lumped this last category into everything above. So it's no longer scale data. And every one of the units is not the same. So you'll see that quite often with income, and it's actually a very confusing thing that we do on assignment number 5, and the midterm has a question on it that's going to drive you crazy if you don't understand this. So a questionnaire. How do you put data into a questionnaire? Okay, it consists of items that assess one or more constructs. So you can put a scale score in it, or you can put a response format in it. You can make it open-ended, or you can make it closed-ended. You can force responses. So building questionnaires are really tough because you have to figure out, number one, what your constructs are and how those constructs will measure so that you end up with valid measures of whatever it is that you want. So a Likert type scale, this is a Likert scale. Strongly agree, mostly agree. So this is ordinal data because it goes in an order. This is, you really agree with something, you really disagree with it, and everything between those stays in that same order. This is called psychometrics. It's a measure of an intangible psychological trait or attitude using multi-items. So this is called a Likert type scale. The guy's name who invented him was Likert. Scales and indexes, I never know whether it's indexes or indices, but the Rosenberg self-esteem scale has stood the test of time. In 1965, Rosenberg came up with these questions here to determine what self-esteem, how you'd measure self-esteem. These are the constructs that he determined made up really reliable and valid measures for self-esteem. Now notice what he did in here in the questions is these ones with an asterisk beside them are counter, you know, they have a counterintuitive response to them. So you can't go down here and say yes, 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 and end up with a reliable and valid measure, because he broke it up. It forces the respondent to actually stop and think on question number 3, number 5, and number 8, 9, and 10, because they're counterintuitive to the format of the other responses. And so this has stood the test of time as valid. a valid way to measure a valid way to construct a measurement of self-esteem. So this is how you come up with constructs. These are actually 10 different constructs. And so taken together, these have been shown to reliably and validly measure self-esteem. Observational measures are things that measures that are rated by observers, and they're sometimes made without the awareness of the person performing the behavior. Unobtrusive measures are measures that are made of behaviors or situations without disturbing the naturally occurring behavior or situation in order to reduce changes that might occur if there was awareness of measurement. This is really tough to do. Most people do participant observation studies, which is what I did on MLK Boulevards throughout South Florida, because everybody was aware I was there. I'm a white guy. I can't stand on a corner and take pictures. I can't even park my car in a corner without altering behavior, because especially if I'm trying to observe whether the police are accurate in saying, oh, this corner here is a high crime district and everybody comes here to buy their drugs or pick up a prostitute. So if I park there on the corner, I'm going to intrude on this behavior and I'm going to alter the behavior. So it's very, very tough to do this when you actually get down to try and think about it. These are ways of developing your constructs. So what is measurement? Measurement refers to the process of systematically observing some feature or characteristic of the world and then recording it in the form of a number or a category. We make observations of the world all the time, but when we make those observations systematic in a form that allows analysis, we're doing measurement. So observing and measuring are very, very different things. I was doing a participant observation study in Liberty City. I was not there to actually measure anything. I was there to get a quantitative assessment of what things were like, and to also build my own knowledge about it so that as I did future research I knew more about it. So there were very few things that I measured when I was in Liberty City, but I observed everything. I was like a sponge soaking it all in. So units versus levels of measurement now get into some of these research vocabulary terms that are going to be very important for you. The level of measurement. Are you measuring nominal data, ordinal data, or interval data? A unit of measurement, if the value is 24, you have to ask yourself, 24 what? Especially if you're doing ordinal data, as you'll find out when we do the in the midterm question in assignment number 5. We have a median of 18 when we look at income. Okay, so there's one histogram which I produce, and you're supposed to tell me what the median, mode, and mean are. But when you use ordinal data to look at income, the 18th quantile, it's called a quantile, is a measure of $22,000 to $32,000, for example. So the 18th quantile, 18 what, doesn't mean anything in ordinal data if it's just the 18th quantile. So this is a unit of measurement, is very important. And you can use quantiles, but you have to know what the quantiles are before you can do your analysis. So the unit of analysis, is it people? Is it income? Is it dollar value? Is it narratives, like my studies are? And the level of analysis is quantitative or categorical. So is it a community? Is it a university campus? Is it the breezeway? Is it a classroom? So this level of analysis is also very important. So you have to understand these 4 terms and use them repeatedly in your research writing and in your assignments, and especially in your research project. So this is one example which I really like. Once again, first time I did this class, it was during the 2012 election, and somebody had claimed research that said that Obama was soft on immigration. So what were they measuring? Remember back here on this, level of measurement, unit of analysis, level of analysis. What were they measuring when they made this construct? Somebody somewhere created a construct that Obama was very, very soft on immigration. And the opposing, and the reason why they were doing this is somebody was trying to construct bias against Obama and win approval in an audience that wanted to hear those kinds of narratives about a Democrat being soft on immigration. So the story is, the construct is, that people were crossing the border, having a welcome desk there that gives them welfare and gives them health care, and then registers them to vote because they're typically going to vote Democrat. So these are constructs. Everything in this cartoon is a construct. And somebody somewhere went to a great deal of trouble to build those constructs in so that voters who wanted to be tough on immigration would not vote for Obama. And so this is observation interpreted with the help of a biased narrative. Somebody had set out to say, this is what we are observing in America. And they built in all of these constructs. The constructs are, they're crossing the border from Mexico, and they're getting health care, and they're getting welfare, and they're registering to vote to support Democrats. Because Democrats are soft on immigration. So, actual measurement. What do we do when we actually measure President Obama on immigration? Well, this is deportations in the year 2000. Blue is criminal deportations. Red is non-criminal deportations. And so through all of the Bush years up until 2007, it continued to rise. But 2008, 2010, 2009, 2010, it continued to rise. And so Obama has been tougher on immigration and illegal immigrants than the 8 years previous under a Republican president. That's measurement versus observation. Okay, so internal consistency is another important term. I'm not going to get into them on the video. I want to keep the videos as short as possible. Test and retest does reliability. Alternative forms of reliability are available. Inter-rater reliability, these are all terms that you need to understand so that you can assess the reliability of a measure. And here's this diagram. I want you to look at figure 3.2 and understand that. When we get into Cronbach's alpha, I've crossed it out on this slide here, and the split half reliability. Don't kill yourself on those. Those are not going to be part of what we study. So keep yourself, give yourself a break and don't get into the Cronbach's alpha and the split half. We're not going to get into that. Assessing validity of a measure. You can check face validity and construct validity. Those are very, very important terms that we're going to get into now. This is how they do the table on figure 3.3 in the textbook for measuring validity, face validity, construct validity, and there's a lot of breakdown on the construct validity that you can get into. And we already talked about construct validity as it came down to President Obama being tough on immigration. So here you have to ask yourself so just to come back to this cartoon a little bit, what kind of constructs are possible on this assessment of whether Obama is tough on immigration? Some of the constructs that are possible are, did the person enter the country illegally? Did they swim or climb or walk across a border somewhere? Did they, coming from Haiti or from Cuba, did they float in on a raft? Okay. Did they enter the country legally and then overstay their visa? This is the most common construct for illegal immigration, if people really want to get down to it. But that doesn't sell well in a political campaign, because there's no way you can construct bias out of that, because there's really nothing you can do about people entering the country illegally and then overstaying their visa. They're still an illegal immigrant because they're here illegally. Unemployed and illegal. So do people come to the United States in order to rely on the government programs? Do they come here because we have better government programs? The truth is, it's not very common for them to do that. Are they here for illicit reasons? Did they come here as part of some criminal activity? Are they part of a drug importation ring where they are here and working with somebody across the border somewhere to bring drugs in? Or are they here to have an anchor baby? So that's another construct which somebody always puts out here, is that, oh, as long as they can get here, they want to have a baby right away, so then the baby is an American citizen. Because it's less desirable to separate a family. So these are all constructs which you need to look at if you're looking at causes and correlations and reasons for illegal immigration. Construct validity, I'll let you get into this as well. This is from the textbook. Concurrent validity is a positive correlation between the scale scores and a current behavior that is related to the construct assessed by the scale. And predictive validity is a positive relationship between a scale score and future behavior. So those are all, these are two very important things that are going to relate to your own research project. Operationalizing a conceptualization. Boy, that's a mouthful to get out. After defining conceptually what to measure, researchers must then figure out how to measure it. What kind of instruments are you going to use? Questionnaires or instruments? Protocols and personnel are going to be involved. Can you find proxies for those most difficult constructs that just kind of belie any way of defining them and capturing them. So there's proxies that you can use. Indicators and scales and indices are often part of this as well. When you're dealing with the United Nations, especially as it relates to human rights violations, there's indices. There's indexes out there from the United Nations for just about everything. Women's health, babies' health, HIV, incidence rates. There's indexes out there that you can pull from the United Nations, and it's already done, and it's research that's already there as secondary data available for you. And that's it for this chapter, and after module number 4 we will get into putting together assignment number 2. But right now, assignment number 1 should be almost done for most of you who are on time in watching these modules, and I look forward to hearing from you if you have any questions. Thanks.